Does look like now we're in the early stages of another wave of COVID. The long-predicted autumn wave, scientists had said this would come, and since the beginning of September, the numbers have been increasing. According to the Office for National Statistics, in the week to the 24th of September, 1.3 million people in the UK are estimated to have had the virus. That's a 25% increase on the week before, and it's rising in every part of the UK. So in Northern Ireland, it's about 1 in 40 people, in Scotland, 1 in 45, and in England and Wales, it's about 1 in 50. And you can expect those numbers to increase week on week for a little while yet.
Let me just deal with this and I'll be with you.
There has been a sharp rise in the number of people who are going into hospital with COVID. At the beginning of September, it was about 500 a day. At the end of September, it was about 1,100 a day, so a very steep rise. What has been a feature, particularly of Omicron, and as people have become more likely to have had a vaccine, you're seeing people going in with COVID rather than because of COVID. So they're there for a different medical reason. If you look at death rates, of course, it takes a while for these new infections in this autumn wave to feed through to the mortality rates. And at the moment, the numbers are actually going down. It's around 30 people a day who are dying, if you look at the death certificates, as a result of COVID. And that's much, much less than at the beginning of the year when it was about 1,200 a day. So we're nowhere near that. And to be perfectly honest, we're unlikely to get back to those kinds of levels unless, of course, there is a really nasty variant lurking around the corner. The big concern is that we've been locked up for so long that because of COVID, that flu has virtually disappeared around the world for the last few years, and that means that our immunity to flu is much lower. So the concern is that we might get hit by this twin-demic combination of high COVID rates and high flu rates, both at the same time, both viruses taking advantage of low immunity. And that could lead to serious problems for the NHS, because you would have a very large number of people coming in potentially, and that would occupy beds that are needed to get rid of the backlog, the waiting list of people needing care for other medical conditions that has built up over the long pandemic years. If you're feeling unwell, you stay at home, just as you would do with any other disease, but there's no requirement to do so once you're feeling much better. You can go back to work, you can mix with other people. Of course, you may choose not to, and you should certainly bear in mind that there are some people who are very vulnerable to serious disease, and take precautions with them.
Can you confirm your date of birth?
So UK Health Security Agency is really encouraging people to come forward. Now, at the moment, it's everybody over the age of 50 is going to be called forward for an autumn booster, and they say it is utterly essential that we do. With low immunity and high rates of COVID now as cases rise, then that is a combination that the NHS is really not going to want to see becoming a feature in the months ahead. If there's one thing we've learned through all the waves of COVID, is that you should never look too far into the future. It is a virus that is very difficult to predict. Now, it's entirely possible that everybody comes forward, gets their jabs, and we get through this with no big problem. And the hope is we can continue doing that through this winter. The risk is if people don't come forward for their jabs, then that will lead to more serious infections, and that will cause problems for the NHS. And of course, if that happens to too great an extent, then there will be calls for masks to return and so on. I can't see that happening if people come forward for the vaccine. It is a good vaccine. It has got us out of this mess, could continue keeping us out of this mess if we come forward for the jabs when we're called.